first thing I noticed when I got in there and I saw a blanket that was so familiar, Maharaji's blanket. You know, he wore these plaid blankets. They were probably the best blankets in the day, I don't know. But they were very remarkable. They seemed to be very distinctive in a sense. And I saw his blanket on the tucket before he came out. And I was, at that moment, convinced that I'd already opened up just by seeing the blanket. Somehow that was so strangely familiar and comfortable. It's such a nice blanket. I remember putting my head down on the blanket, my forehead. And this is again something that's important to my background, being Jewish, for one thing. We don't, it's against Judaism to pray to idols or to surrender to beings, But somehow I felt comfortable doing that, and in my mind I thought, well, whatever Maharaji is, at this stage, I'm going to just surrender myself to him in a sense. I'll trust. He came out, and it wasn't terribly remarkable. Like a nice old man, like I said at the beginning here, he looked like a nice Jewish man. He looks very comfortable, very sweet and kind. There wasn't flowing angels around his head or anything like that nature. But he was sweet and nice. And he basically patted us on the head, patted me on the head in particular. I thought he was very charming. And he said, you please, join the other satsang, which I did. And one of the reasons I felt so comfortable about being with Maharaji is that it's satsang like this. These folks here that were so comfortable, it's like New York Jews smoking herb, this is my kind of people. This wasn't online at all. This we went to see Maharaji in several days. And one day he called me up to his what do you call it? Tucket. And actually, I got a lot of attention from Maharaji. I felt he oftentimes would speak to me and say things to me, but this time he called me up and said, Badrinath. I said, yes. And of course, it wasn't directly, it was through his interpreter, Badrinath. Yes, Maharaji. He said, you don't eat my food, I said, well, Maharaji, I'm really hungry, And Maharaji, when he'd give you food, as Ramesh mentioned, it would be a plate that was full. He would make you eat. And of course, oftentimes I understand that when people did get a little freaked out, one of our satsang was talking about instead of walking underwater or something, he'd fill them up with food, trying to bring them down. So I said, no, Maharaji, I'm not hungry. He said, well, last night you had a Coke and cookies for dinner. And although in one hand you could say, yeah, anybody could imagine that, but that's specifically what I had, was a Coke and cookie for dinner, and there's no way anyone would know that but me and him, And all that's a very minor thing to say, and of course if you want to be skeptical, you could say, I could have guessed that. But for me, and at that moment, I knew he knew what about me, And he did it in a way, for me, in a very gentle way. He didn't have to, bring angels down from the sky. He didn't have to shock me. He didn't shock people. He was a gentle, loving, caring, beautiful being. And when he disclosed himself in that way to me, it was an example of how loving he was. Just enough to let me see the crack of his awareness, and enough just to say, yes, it is true. This man is a saint.
You're lucky he didn't ask you to take acid.